Hello there! Today I'm going to show you how to make this very nice vest. It's a v-neck vest with the Irish cables design, and I made it in a small baby size, but I'm going to show you how to divide the stitches so that you can add it to whichever size you want. So I'm going to show you how to divide the stitches, and like this you can adapt it to whatever size you need if you want to make it bigger or smaller. And I'm going to show you how many stitches you'll need to add or take off to make it bigger or smaller. I'm going to be doing a baby size, so I'm going to be casting on 90 stitches in total, and the sequence is going to go like this: 4 straight stitches, 2 purl stitches, 8 stitches for the cable, and then another 2 purl stitches. So that's the group of stitches that's going to be for each sequence of the design. 4 straight, 2 purl, 8 cable, 2 purl. 4 straight, 2 purl, 8 cable, 2 purl. And like this, if you want to add more, you're going to add another sequence of 4, 2, 8, 2. 4, 2, 8, 2. And since we're knitting this in the round, so you want to make sure that you're finishing with a 2 purl and you're beginning with a 4 straight, so that it should be continuous, the design in the round. Another important thing to take note in order to know on which stitch to start is, since we're going to be making a V-neck in the front, so we want that the division for the V should be directly in middle. With the 96 stitches that I'm doing, it's going to come out to 3 cables on each side, on the front and the back. And so the exact middle point will be in middle of the 3rd cable that's in middle. Now I need to find out where this point is going to be, because we're going to be knitting it in the round, beginning from here and going in the round until where we divide for the sleeves. We're going to divide for the front and the back, and for the front we're going to do the V. So I need to find out what's this point over here. Since I'm doing 96 stitches, so I'm going to need exactly half of that, which is 48, is going to be to divide the front and the back. And half of the 48, which is 24, that's going to be my starting point. So let's check on the design where is going to be the first stitch on the 24. Here I did the calculation: 4 for half of the middle cable, 2 purl, 4 for the straight ones, 2 purl, 8 for the second cable, 2 purl, and then another 2 from this 4 straight ones here on the side. That comes out to a total of 24. So I'm going to be beginning with 2 stitches for this straight 4 stitches piece over here. But that's for after the ribbing. We're going to start now with the cast on and the ribbing. I'm going to be using 5mm circular needles and a 4-weight yarn, and you can adapt to whatever yarn you're using, whichever size needles they need. And we're going to do the long tail cast on. So I take a nice big tail so that I shouldn't run short. Okay, and now we take the tail, hold it into these 2 fingers, and then from here you wrap around the thumb and the 4th finger, and you put it back between those 2 fingers. Don't hold it down too tight because you'll need to pull it through those fingers. Now you take your needle and you push down from here. Now we could use this finger to help to hold it open like that. Now we're going to go under here, over here, and out the thumb and pull. There we had our first stitch on the needle. The next ones are going to be easier. I'm going under here, and pull through that loop, take out thumb and pull. Again, under here, under here, pull through that loop, take out thumb and pull. Under here, through the loop and pull. And so we're going to continue this way. I'm going to do 96 stitches. If you're doing more, then just cast on however many stitches you're doing, and we'll meet at the end of the cast on row. Once you have all your stitches cast on, now we're going to be joining it in the round and beginning the first row of the ribbing. We're going to do a ribbing of 2 knits, 2 purl, 2 knits, 2 purl, going around and around. So you pull up on the left needle and on the right needle so that they should be close to the tip. Now right before you join, it's important to look that all the stitches are facing inwards. There shouldn't be any twists or anything like that. It should all be facing into the same direction all around. I see that mine are all facing around, so we're good to go. The first row is always a bit tight, a bit awkward, but don't worry, it gets easier as you go. So we're going to start with 1 knit and try to pull that a bit tight so that there shouldn't be a gap over here. And now another knit. So 2 knits. And now 1 purl and another purl. Like that. Now again, 2 knits. 1 and 2 and 2 purls, 1 and 2, and we just continue going around, 2 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit, 2 purl, until we finish the first row. Here I came to the end of the first row. So now we should finish on a 2 purls. And now we're going to continue knitting the knits and purling the purls, going around and around for the ribbing until we have 6 rows of ribbing. You could see the rib design is starting to come out as we go along. After you're done 6 rows of ribbing, again, if you're doing a bigger size, you might want a bigger ribbing. You can adjust it to however many rows you want. I'm going to be doing 6 rows. And now I reached the finish point, the last 2 stitches. I can tell by where the tail is. The tail was the end of that first row. And so here is beginning the next row. So I know that I'm by the end over here on those last 2 purl stitches. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start with the design. And as I showed you before, we're going to begin here with 2 for the straight and then continue 2 purl, 8 for the cable, 2 purl, 4 straight, 2 purl, 8 for the next cable, and so on. So we're going to start with 2 knit ones, which when we finish the row, we're going to do another 2, and that'll make up that 4 straight panel. So 1, 2 knit. Next, we're doing 2 purls for those in between ones, 1 and 2. Next, we're doing 8 straight knit ones, which is going to be the cable. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That was for the cable. Now 2 purls, 1 and 2, and now 4 straight for that panel in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then another 2 purls, 1 and 2. So we're continuing on this row, going about like the pattern as I showed you. So it's 4, 2, 8, 2, 4, 2, 8, 2. Now I did 2 purls. The first row is always a bit hard to tell, but as you go along, you're going to see exactly where you're holding and which stitches you need to do. Here was 2 purl after after 4 straight, so now I'm going to do 8 straight for the next cable. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next, 2 purl, 1, 2. Next, 4 straight. When I say straight, I mean knit. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, 2 purl, 1, 2. Next, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops. 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 purls, 1, 2, and then you should end up the whole round with 2 knit ones, which together with the 2 first ones will make up that 4 knits in middle to make that panel, which will be on the side. So now it gets much easier because you can see clearly where you have knits and where you have purls. And we continue on in this design of 4 knit, 2 purl, 8 knit, 2 purl, 4 knit, 2 purl, etc., etc. The first 2 should be another 2 knit, which completes this 4 knit panel one. Here we go. and then next 2 purl, and then 8 knit, which will be the cable, 6, 7, 8. And if you lose count of where you're holding, you could always look back and see if you're by knit, or you're by purls, and like this you know where to go. 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to continue in this way, continuing with our pattern of 4, 2, 8, 2, until you have a total of 10 rows with the pattern. After you finish doing 10 rows with the design, now you could see the design much more clearer, where there's the 8 stitches for the cable, and then the 2 purl stitches and the 4 straight ones. So you could start seeing the design already. And now on the next row, we're going to make our first cables on those 8 stitches spaces over here. So I reached the end of the 10th row. I could tell again by the tail over here that I'm now on the last stitch. So now I'm beginning the first stitch of the next row. So it's those 2 from that 4 panel over there. So 1 and 2. Then 2 purl. 1 and 2. And now I've reached the first 8 stitches over here. So this is going to be our first cable. Now to do a cable, you could use literally anything. You could use another knitting needle. You could use a cable needle. You could use a toothpick. You could use really anything you want. I like to use these small stitch markers. I find them the easiest to use and to keep around. So since we have 8 stitches over here, so to make the cable, we're going to take off 4 stitches, which is exactly half. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, depending how you want the cable to go, if you want it to be from the front or from the back, it doesn't really matter. You could choose whichever you like. But once you choose that you want it from the front or from the back, then you should be consistent in the rest of the project to make all the cables go in the same direction. So I'm going to be doing them to the back. So I'm going to make sure that all my cables are going to be through the back, which means the stitches that I took off are going to be in the back while I knit the remaining 4 stitches. So this I'm going to leave here in the back. And now we knit the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. And now we're going to put those stitches that we took off back onto the working needle. It could get a little tricky because it's a little tight, so just try to do it very carefully and make sure that you're not dropping any stitches. So 1, 2, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. Once you have the stitches back on the working needle, we're going to knit them carefully. 1, 1, 2, 3, and and 4. There we go. And here we've created our first cable right over here. You can see that twist over there. This is going to create the cable design. Before we continue, I'm going to take another stitch marker and I'm going to place it into that first stitch right under the needle on the straight panel that we just knit. Because like this I can tell which row is a cable row, and then we'll know when we need to make the next cable. So I don't like to put it on the cable one because it's so twisted, so I can't tell exactly which row it's on, so I put it on the straight one, and like this I can tell exactly which row we're on. So now we continue with the next stitches, which is 2 purls, 1 and 2, then 4 straight ones, 4 knit ones, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then another 2 purl, 1 and 2. And here we've reached the next cable, so we're going to do exactly the same steps as we did on the previous one to create the next cable. So you take the stitch marker or needle or whatever you're using and remove 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now because I put this one to the back, I'm going to put the next one also. So make sure it's in the back. And now 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now put the stitches back on. If you're using a double pointed needle or a cable needle, then you don't need to put the stitches back on. You could knit them right off the needle that you're using. But since I'm using a stitch marker, so I need to put them back. And now 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there we've created our second cable over there. So we continue on this way, this whole round, which is going to be the cable round, until we finish the whole row. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 purl. And here we've reached this next cable, so we're going to do exactly the same steps as I've showed you in the previous 2 cables. Okay, so I've just finished the last cable on this row. Let's just finish this row over here. 4 more stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. So we just finished the cabling row. We made all our cables over here. And now we're going to continue on knitting just like we did over here. Knitting the knit, purling the purls, 4, 2 purl, 8, 2 purl, until we reach another 16 rows from the last cable. Now when you knit the cable stitches where we made the cable, they're a little bit tight, but don't worry, as we go along, they're going to get looser and easier to knit. So I'll meet you back once I've completed another 16 rows after that cable. Here I finished 16 rows after that cable row, and let me show you how you can count. So here's the stitch marker that we put on the row that we made the cables, and we're going to count all the V's that are going upwards right above this stitch marker over here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So there we go. And I know that I'm at the beginning. Here's the tail. I'm on the second one on this 4 one, which will be on this side. So now we're going to do another row of cabling. So I do these 2 stitches over here. 1, 2. And I'm going to move the stitch marker now to the new stitch that I made here for this row. 1 and 2. And here I'm going to make the cable just as I did the others. Take a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Put these back. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And like this we continue this whole row just like we did this one with making the cables by each cable place. And then we're going to continue knitting another 16 rows and then the next cable until you have the size that you need before the armholes. And then we're going to separate for the armholes. So again, I'm making baby size, so I have just a little bit more to go. I think I'm going to make another 1 cable or maybe even just a half one, and I'll have enough to separate. But according to what measurement you're making, that's how many rows and how many times cables you'll be doing. And one thing I do want to mention, if you're going to go according to size and measurements, so this design makes the knitted part a little bit scrunched up, and when it's worn, it's a bit more stretched out. So if you're measuring with a measuring tape or something, then you should measure it when it's stretched out, because that's how it's going, that's the size it's going to be when it's worn. The way it is when it's scrunched up, it's a little bit taller than how it would be stretched out. So just make sure to measure it like this, and then you'll get the right measurements. Oops. I have reached now the length that I need. So it turned out to be from the last cable, including the cable row. It came out to 9 rows. But again, do it as long as you need for whichever size you're doing. And the next step that we're going to do is to separate the front and the back. We're going to knit them each not in the round, front and back. And in the back, we're going to make a few decreases on the sides for the armholes and then a little bit for the neck. And in the front, we're going to be making decreases also for the armholes and also in middle to create a V neckline. So we're going to start with the back. I'm now at the beginning of the next row, those 2 pieces over there. So I have 96 stitches altogether, so I'm going to do half of that, which is 48, and then we're going to start to go back and forth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 45, 46, 47, and 48. So here I've reached exactly half of the vest. And now we're going to start going back. So I'm not going to continue knitting this row on here. I'm now going to turn the work around and going to be knitting on this side. So when you're knitting on the purl side, you do exactly the same thing, which means you knit the knits and purl the purls. So just look whatever stitches you have coming up and you just do according to what those are. And so it's exactly the same kind of method as you do when you're knitting on the other side. Just knit the knits and purl the purls. That's the name of the game. Okay, so here I've reached again that first stitch from the beginning of the round. So I'm turning around again, and now I'm going to start with the decreases for the armholes. The next row we are going to begin by making 1 decrease here at the beginning and another decrease at the end of the row. So I'm going to be using a different pair of needles, the same size, 5mm, just to make it more easier. But you could use the same needles if you don't have another pair. It's just the same. So we're going to do 1 decrease. Just knit 2 together. Like that. And then just continue that row. And when you reach the last 2 stitches before you need to turn, then you knit those 2 together as well. There we go. And now we knit the purl row without any decreases. Now I've reached again the knit side, and I'm going to start and finish again with a decrease on each side. We're going to do the decreases only on the knit side. So when you purl, there's no decreases until I'm going to continue until I have 5 decreases on each side. So that's 10 decreases altogether to create a little bit of a dip for the armhole. Again, if you're doing a bigger size, then you'll want to decrease a few more rows. You could measure it on whoever you're making it for, either yourself or whoever it may be, and see how much of a dip would be needed for the armholes. And do keep in mind that we're going to make a border around the armhole, so it's going to be a little bit more filled up, so you might want to go a little bit deeper with the dip. So I'm going to continue until I have 5 decreases all together on each side, and then we'll meet back here. And remember to pay attention when it's time to make the next cable. Here I want to show you how to make a cable on the purl side, because now I have reached 16 rows and now I need to make these cables, but I'm holding by a purl side. So let me show you how to do it. First I have one stitch over here, a regular one, right before that first cable over here. Here we go. And now we do exactly the same as we do a cable on the front side. It is exactly the same. So we take off 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, put it in the back, just like that. And remember, now we're purling. So purl 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then put those stitches back. Oops, almost lost that one there. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and purl them as well. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go, and we've created exactly the same kind of cable as the other ones. So basically, in the purl side, you do exactly the same way you do on the front side, the cables, just purling instead of knitting. There we go, I just finished that cable row. So now I'm going to move this one back up to the row that I just did. But I'm going to move it over here on this column, because here it's already getting closed from the decreases that I'm doing. So let me put that right here on the first row that I just did now, so we keep count of the cables. Okay, and now you just continue. I already did 2 decreases over here, 1 and 2, so I have another 3 more to go. Here I finished doing 5 decreases on each side. You can see it made this nice little dip over here. So now I'm going to continue on just knitting and purling straight without doing any decreases until I have the size I want. And then we're going to shape the neckline. Here I've gotten to the length that I need, right over there. And if you notice, by this cable that I did not do on the side ones, because since we did the decreases, so now there were 7 stitches for each of these cables, so that's not enough to make a whole cable, so I just left it like this and continued knitting straight. So now what we're going to do is we're going to divide the back into 3 parts, for the 2 shoulders and for the neck. So now I have a total of 38 stitches on the back. So I'm going to divide it in this way. 12 for one shoulder, 12 for the other shoulder, and 14 stitches for the neckline. In order to create the neckline, we're going to knit a few rows, just about 4 rows on each shoulder and not on the middle neck part. So what we do is we begin knitting 12 stitches for the first shoulder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that's 12 stitches for the first shoulder. Actually, this I'm going to remove because I don't need it anymore on this side. Okay, so now these 12 stitches, or however many stitches you have for the first shoulder, now we're going to knit them on their own. So turn it around and knit those shoulder stitches in the purl side. And 12. Just ignore these tails over here. I finished one ball of yarn and I joined a new one, so that's what left these tails over here, so just ignore that. Now we're going to do another row front and back for the first shoulder. 1, 2, okay, so in total we did 4 rows on the shoulder, just on the shoulder stitches. And now we're not going to cast off because we want to keep these stitches live. In other words, to keep them as they are, and so that later we can connect them nicely to the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little piece of yarn from a different color and put these stitches on this yarn. So I'm going to take a regular needle. I think it's called a tapestry needle, not sure. Okay, so now I'm going to move all these 12 stitches from the first shoulder onto this piece of yarn. Ten, 11, 12. There we go. And if the piece is long enough, you don't even need to make a knot or nothing. Just make sure it has plenty of space on the end so it shouldn't come off. So that's our first shoulder over there. Now for the neck pieces over here, for the neck stitches, so we said we're going to leave here 14. So I'm going to take another piece of yarn. So here's another piece of yarn to put on the neck stitches. The neck stitches we want to keep live so that later when we make the border all around the V-neck and the back that we want, it should be easy to pick them up. So that's why we're keeping these stitches live. So now we take off 14 stitches for the middle of the neck. Again, if you're doing a bigger size, then take off however many you divided. And so however many stitches will be in the neck. I wasn't counting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay, again, pull that through carefully. Make sure you don't lose any stitches on the way. There we go. And now we're going to do those 2 rows like we did over here. We're going to do that to this second shoulder. So I'm going to cut the yarn from here, the working yarn, leave a little bit of a tail. And now I'm just going to pick up from here and knit 4 rows on the second shoulder. After you're done 4 rows on the second shoulder, now we're going to take these off also onto a piece of yarn. There we go. And now the back of the vest is done. Here we have it, the 2 shoulders and the neck in between. Now we're going to move on to the front. Oh, I forgot to cut the yarn over here. Here we go. So for the front, we're going to knit it in this manner. We're going to do 2 sides separately in order to create the V in between. So on each side, we're going to be doing decreases, just like we did over here, 5 decreases to create that turn over there for the armhole. And at the same time, we're going to be doing decreases here in middle to create the V. So here I have 48 stitches, and so half of that is going to be 24. So I'm going to start by knitting 24 stitches, and just like we did in the back, the first row of front and back, there's no decreasing. And don't forget to place your stitch marker. We remember that we separated by 9 rows, so let's just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There we go. And so we can keep track when to make the next cable. Don't forget to do that. Okay. So now we start knitting for 24 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, the next row we are going to start with the decreases. So the way we're going to decrease is over here for the armhole. We're going to decrease just like here, which means every knit row we're going to decrease 1 until we get to 5 decreases. And for the V, the way we're going to decrease is we're going to also do it only on the knit row, but we're going to do it every 4th row. So that means every second knit row, because it's 1 knit, 1 purl, 1 knit, 1 purl. So it'll be every second knit row, which comes out to every 4th row altogether. And for the V, I'm going to be doing a total of 7 decreases going up, because you want to make sure, and you should pay attention very carefully, if you're doing a different size and more stitches, just make sure that your end stitch amount should be exactly the same as the shoulder over here. So I'm going to be doing 7 decreases on this side and 5 decreases on this side. So altogether I'm going to be left with 12 stitches, which is exactly the same that I have for the shoulder. So make sure to divide your stitches in such a way that you're going to come up with exactly the same amount for the shoulder. So now I'm going to start here with a decrease. Didn't notice that. It's actually a purl. And on this row, I'm going to decrease also the 2 on the end and Since I'm going to be decreasing not on every row, but every fourth row, so I'm going to place a stitch marker right where I did the decrease. Like this, I can tell which row I'm on and see when I need to make the next decrease when I'm after 4 rows. So we're going to continue like this, making 5 decreases altogether on this side, and here after 4 rows, making a decrease on this side until we have 7 decreases on this side and 5 on this side. And remember always to check your cable marker and see when to make the next cable. Here I see that the stitch marker is 4 rows down, which means that now I need to make another decrease on this side. And I'm going to move the stitch marker up. Make sure that the front that you're making should line up exactly the same height as the back that you're making. So count how many rows you made in the back and do that exact same amount in the front. The best way to keep count is to put a stitch marker when you began here and where you're beginning here, and then you just count up the rows. You could count them up by the straight ones, by the V's going up, and that's how you can see exactly how many rows you need to make for each side. So just make sure that they align exactly with the same amount of rows. Here I finished this first side of the front, making 5 decreases along this side, 7 decreases every 4th row along this side, and now I've reached the same amount of rows as I have on the back. So now the next step is to connect these 2 shoulder pieces. So for this part, we're going to need 3 needles altogether. So here's one, here's the second one, and you should have another one. If you don't have another needle of the same size of 5 millimeters, you could use a smaller or bigger needle. A bigger would probably be a bit hard to put them on, so better a smaller needle just to put on the stitches over here. So we're going to pick up these stitches that we took off. We had here 12, so 1, careful, it shouldn't come out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Once your stitches are on the needle, you could take out that piece of yarn that we threaded them in. Okay. Now before we start casting them off and connecting, we are going to turn our whole work inside out so that we're on the wrong side. Here we go. Confusing with all the tails over here, but okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be knitting these 2 together and casting them off at the same time. Because most of the stitches are purl stitches, so we're going to work it all in purls. So move them as close as you can to the edge. And now with your 3rd needle, we're going to take the yarn from here. So here, we're going to purl into this first stitch on the back needle first, here, and then at the same time purl into the first stitch on the front needle. It's a bit tricky and you need to pay very close attention that you're not dropping anything. So just do it very carefully. Okay, we've put the needle purlwise both into here and into here on that first stitch. Now we're going to purl it and carefully pull it through both of them. Here you see, I pulled it through both, and now we're going to remove that first stitch from both needles. Oops, careful. Okay, here we go. So that's our first cast off stitch over here. As we knit them both together, purl them both together, and now we're going to continue and cast them off at the same time. So into the next stitch, again, purl first on the back needle one, and then on the front needle one. Don't remove the stitch yet from the needle. Finish the purl carefully through both loops, and now remove them both. Be careful that it shouldn't be too tight. Make sure that it's nice and loose-ish, not too loose, but regular tension. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put this first loop over this one in order to cast it off. So take one of the needles, doesn't matter which one, and pull that first stitch over here carefully over the second one. Here we go. And that's our first cast off stitch over here. And you should be left with one stitch on this needle. Now we're going to do it again. So first into the back needle, then the front, do the purl, carefully pull it through both, and remove both stitches from the needles, and then put that first loop over the new one. Here we go. We just casted off that second one. And this is the way we're going to continue until we finish all the stitches on both needles. Purl, purl, carefully through and remove, and pull it over. Purl, purl, carefully through both and over. And I'm up to the last stitch. Purl, purl. This one is loose because it was the end of this side. I'm just going to pull it so it shouldn't come out. Oops. Purl. There we go. Okay, once you've finished casting off all the stitches from the shoulder, then you cut the yarn and pull it through the loop to secure it. There we go. Let's turn it back onto the right side. And here we've created our first shoulder. See how neat that connection is? There we go. So this is the first side and shoulder. The next step is going to be to knit this side exactly the same as we knit this side, but backwards. In other words, the decreases for the V are going to be at the beginning of the row, and the decreases for the armhole are going to be at the end of the row, which means here we're going to decrease every fourth row, and here we're going to finish with a decrease on every row until we have 5 decreases. So that first row, we're going to start without any decreases. just like we did the others. There's one row without any decreases. After you've done that first row, now we're going to start with the decreases. Remember, the decreases of the V, which is every fourth row, is at the beginning of the row on this side, and the decreases on the armhole, which is on every front row, every knit row, for 5 rows, for 5 decreases, is on the end of the row. So we're starting with a decrease for the V. And I'm going to place my stitch marker. And finish with a decrease, which is the first one for the armhole. So continue on this way, doing exactly the same as here. Just remember the V decreases at the beginning of the row, armhole decreases at the end of the row. Once you've reached the height that you need, we're going to connect them exactly the same as we did over here. And both our shoulders are done. Look how nice that is coming out to be. So now what's left is to make the borders around here and around the armholes. The way we're going to do that is we're going to be picking up stitches all around here and here, and then knitting a 2x2 ribbing just like we did here on the bottom to knit to purl for a few rows until we have a nice border all around. In order to make here the V part very neat, we're going to be making decreases by the V in order to create a little V decrease going down like that. That'll come out very nice and neat. So we're going to start. So first we're going to pick up stitches from around the neck and create the V-neck. We are going to start over here by the stitches that we have on the piece of yarn that we hadn't cast off. So these ones are easy to pick up because they're just regular stitches. The first pickup row, we're going to be knitting just regular knit, not yet the knitting and purling, just regular knit. So just go into each stitch over there and knit it. As you go along, you can pull out that piece of yarn just to make it easier. Okay, once you've picked up all the live stitches that we had here for the back of the neck, now we're going to start picking up stitches along the end. So it could get a little tricky, but try to find that last row over here and go into there, into every stitch that you see, and go into two sides of the V, not just one side, go into two. So here's one, going into both sides. 1, 2 is the next one. There isn't really any black and white rule for this. Just try picking up the stitches along however many rows we made over here. And you can tell by looking through what you're picking up and see if there's one stub in middle. Here you see that stub. So that means that we're picking up according to each row. If there's two stubs in middle, that means that you skipped a row. But if there's one stub in between, then that means that we're picking up one for each row. Here we connected the shoulder, so just try to find just a spot over there to go in and to pick up over there. Here you see, I can see a stub in between each pickup stitch, so I know that I'm picking up one for each row. Here I can see clearly in between there are those stubs over there, so I know that I'm picking up one stitch for each row. Okay, that first pickup row is always the hardest, but now it's going to get much easier. Now you could either do this in the round or going back and forth. It doesn't really matter since we're making the ribbing, so it doesn't really matter which way you do it. If you go back and forth, then at the end you're going to have to sew up the two ends over here. If you're going in the round, then it's all connected already. So now we're going to start our 2x2 ribbing over here. So knit 2, 1, 2, and purl 2, 1, 2, knit 2, and purl 2. As I'm getting closer to where the middle is, I'm going to take a second and grab a stitch marker and find exactly where the middle would be. So I see it's over so it looks like it's over here, and I'm going to place my stitch marker right over here where it's the middle. Okay, you see right there in the middle of that cable over here. And when we reach it, we're going to start creating the V in the center with decreases. So let's get up to there. Okay, when you reach up to 2 stitches right before that stitch marker that we placed over there, we are going to knit these two together. If you're on in middle of a 2 knit or a 2 purl, then you just do whatever comes after. So I did 1 knit, so the next one needs to be another knit. So I'm going to knit these two together. Like that. I'm going to move over the stitch marker. And now the next one needs to be 2 purls. So the first purl, I'm going to purl 2 together as well. 1 and 2. So that's 1 purl and 2 purl. So what we've done here is we've done 1 decrease on each side of the stitch marker. And now we continue. Here I've completed the first round of the ribbing, and we're going to continue going around in the ribbing for another. I'm going to do the same amount of rows as I did here on the bottom, which is 2, 4, 6 rows of ribbing. So I'm going to do 6. And when we come here, I'm going to show you how to continue doing those decreases. Once you reach again 2 stitches from the stitch marker, we're going to do another decrease, but this time to keep the pattern of the ribbing, we're going to not go along with 2 knit, 2 purl. We're going to go along with what comes out with the decrease. So here I'm going to decrease 2 knit together. Sorry, 2 knit together. Move the stitch marker. And here I'm going to do 2 purl together. So like this, the rest of the ribbing stays on track and doesn't get off track. Just over here, they're becoming decreased. There we go. And continue the ribbing around. So every time you come to the stitch marker, you're going to knit or purl 2 together on each side, one on the right side of the stitch marker and one on the left side, and going along with whatever comes here. So for example, next row is going to be, I have here 2 purls and then 1 knit. So 2 stitches before the stitch marker is going to be here, this second purl. So I'm going to purl these 2 together, and here I'm going to knit these 2 together because this one is a knit over here. So continue on this way for however many rows you want for the ribbing. I'm doing 6, but you could choose to do more or less, it's up to you. So I've done already 5 rows of ribbing, and I'm going to cast off, because when you cast off it looks like another row of knit, or ribbing in this case. So if I do 5 rows and then cast off, it's going to look just like 6 rows. So now we're going to start the cast off, and we're going to continue in the ribbing pattern of 2 knit, 2 purl. So cast off according to the ribbing. So the knits you cast off knit way, and the purls you cast off the purl way. And it shouldn't be too loose, but it shouldn't be too tight. Just nice and regular tension. Maybe a drop on the tight side. When you reach the 2 stitches before the stitch marker by the V, you're also going to decrease those also on the cast off row. You can remove the stitch marker because we don't need it now. Just remember to do that last decrease as well. Once you finish casting off, just cut your yarn, pull it through that loop, and finish off. And you see how neat and nice that came out. Here by the V, those decreases created that it should go inside a bit to make that nice little neat tuck over there. And now we're going to do exactly the same for the armholes. So we're going to pick up stitches, the first round just knitting, and then continue with the ribbing to knit to purl for 5 rows and then cast off. Here we don't need to make any decreases, we're just going to knit in the round. The only thing that you should pay attention when you do for the armholes is that you should pick up the exact same amount of stitches on both sides. So make sure to count how many stitches you've picked up so that it should be the same thing for both sides. Remember, the first row is just picking up stitches with regular knit, no ribbing yet until the second row, then you start the ribbing. Once you finish the ribbing on both of the armholes, now the last step is just sewing in all the ends. And there you go, your vest is totally complete.